Hi, this is Rick for EDU Mobile. I'm going to talk about now what the expectations are in the course, what some of the assumptions are, and what you should be able to do when you finish looking at this short introductory course to iOS 7. First of all, this is a course that we have designed to highlight new capabilities introduced in the new mobile operating system for Apple devices, iOS 7. We're going to talk about some of the most important changes, that affect development in iOS 7 in 4 1/2-hour sessions. In the first session, we'll talk about iOS 7's new look and feel and some of the rationale behind that look and feel. Basically, what we'll be talking about is why Apple changed things. In previous versions of iOS, as you probably already know, buttons were textured to have kind of a 3D look, and other user interface elements had that texture as well. Now, the appearance is that everything has been flattened. And the reason for this, and I don't want to give all of it away, but the reason really is to focus the user's attention on the underlying function of the application rather than fancy user face elements. It still looks pretty. In some ways, it's even prettier than it was before. But we'll talk about why Apple made these changes. In the second session, we're going to talk about AirDrop, which is a new API that allows file sharing between users using Bluetooth. And also, we'll talk about some of the new multitasking capabilities introduced in iOS 7. In the third session, we're going to begin talking about SpriteKit. And SpriteKit is a new 2D framework for games with very good physics simulation, gravity simulation, and things like that. Now, we'll only be able, in a half-hour session, to kind of cover the very tip of the iceberg. But by the end of that session, you should be able to have a good springboard, or you'll have a good idea of how to get started writing the applications that use SpriteKit. Finally, in the last session, we'll talk about some of the new capabilities of the Camera API. Most importantly, we'll talk about fast video frame rate recording. iOS 7 now supports video at 60 frames per second at a maximum resolution of 720p. We'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about the ability to capture barcodes and decode them in the camera APIs of iOS 7. Some assumptions about you in this course. First assumption is that you already know Objective-C and you have already worked with the previous version of iOS. This is an update course, not a full course that teaches iOS programming. If you have not, please do check out our other offerings, specifically the iOS courses that we already have for iPhone and iPad. These target iOS 6 and earlier, but since nothing really underlying for developers has changed in iOS 7 except for a very few methods that have been deprecated, you should be fine, and then use this course as a update introduction to iOS 7. We do have a full iPhone course with iOS 7 targeted, currently in development, so that should be coming out soon. At the end of this course, you should be able to navigate and use Xcode 5's updated user interface. Xcode 5 ships with iOS 7, and it's a new version of the integrated development environment. It builds upon Xcode 4, so everything that you found and were able to do in Xcode 4, you should be able to do within Xcode 5. However, there are a couple of new wrinkles to how things are located. So you'll be able to navigate around Xcode 5 and use that to your best advantage. You'll also be able to apply these API changes to any new projects you design for Apple devices that are running iOS 7. And in some cases, you should be able to update existing projects to have iOS 7's new styling. There is, when you first open a storyboard or a nib file in Xcode 5, it asks you if you want to update to iOS 7's look and feel. And that's a very simple process, usually. You'll be able to use AirDrop to add file sharing over Bluetooth. You'll be enhancing your applications with new multitasking capabilities. You'll be able to take advantage of the fast frame rate video recording and barcode detection in the camera APIs as well. And then finally, you should also be able to get started using SpriteKit, developing native game applications that realistically model physics. So that is a very interesting possibility now with a 2D game API native to iOS. So let's get started.